Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first edition of Subtxt Office Hours. So I thought this would be a nice opportunity that I could just walk through subtext and show you some of the things that come up in conversations and to make it a lot easier than having to write everything down. So this is my attempt at just being a little bit more casual in going over the different things. And today I want to start, if you're like an expert in narrative structure and you know exactly what you're doing, yet you're trying to use the narrative agents that are in subtext that are there mainly for people who are just getting started and don't have all the history of it. Just wanted to show you a different approach and the way that I would use it. All right, here we are in subtext. Now, in some recent videos, I've gone in here into the narrative agents and I showed how you can just enter your story idea and then have it find the 4 through lines and then go through and figure out the objective story plot, character arcs, all that stuff. So if you already know what you're doing, I would not use this because this is for somebody who's brand new to it, who really doesn't have any idea of what you can do with narrative theory and narrative structure, something that's based around the meaning of what it is you want to get across, not just a set of the typical 16 beats, that kind of thing. So what I would do is I would go into the premise builder, and this is the highly advanced, let me select everything on my own, all this kind of craziness, which requires you to know a whole lot about the narrative structure that is behind subtext. And what you can do is then just pull up Muse here and just write in the kind of story that you would want. So for instance, I want a story that has a happy ending and is about a bunch of dysfunctional couples. All right, maybe just something like that. And it should give you the basic Storyform idea. Now, what I'm really doing is I'm waiting for the next models to come out that likely have multi-step reasoning and that kind of stuff in there, so that then I can go in and make this something that you could completely do from scratch in subtext and actually not even have to do the premise builder. Also, when I can save state, do all that junk with the language model. So already I can see that what it's come back with has been perfect. So it put the objective story domain could be in psychology, as the story would involve a lot of interpersonal dynamics and the mental processes behind their dysfunctional behaviors. That's actually pretty cool. So what that means is if I come down here and I look at the narrative personality, I will just pull that over here into psychology, and now it's set. So now the conflict in the plot is going to be around people's dysfunctional personalities and stuff like that. When you do the narrative agents, it just says the typical Western culture story that's been done a billion times, hero's journey, all that stuff, where pursuit is going to be the problem, and there's a big journey. And then the main character he's somebody important that he doesn't know who he is. There's somebody that believes in him, that kind of stuff. So if you want to do something different and actually have control over what it is that you're doing, you would use Muse here. So this is great. It identified psychology and then suggested for the main character, if the main character is a therapist, their domain could be in the mind, dealing with preconceptions and biases. If the main character is a member of a couple, their domain might be in universe. All right. So this is identifying the conflict that is within the main character that is going to affect him personally. It's like their own personal story through line. And it's actually really smart in that it can only be either an externalized sort of place in the world, like they're a fish out of water, or they're not sure where they fit in, or they don't have a lot of money, or they're ugly or something like that, as opposed to a personal issue that is more about their mindset. So like they're sad, or they're always angry all the time, or they're just a jerk. I don't know. This is something about their mindset here. You can choose one or the other. And then the obstacle character will be the opposite. So then here, the obstacle character would be dynamically opposed to the main characters. So if it's in mind, then be universe. And then the relationship story through line could be in psychology. So it does say it could be in psychology. And then it's also saying it could be in psychology, which is right. But because I haven't identified what the actual relationship story is, so between the main character and the obstacle character, this is not broken. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just saying, based on what you've given me, which is just a story about a happy ending and a bunch of dysfunctional couples, I have no idea what the plot is, and I have no idea what the relationship is going to be. It could be focusing on the dysfunctional relationships for everybody, and then the couple that is focused on the most, so like the centerpiece of it, the heart of the story, their conflict could be in their activities, like hooking up and doing all that kind of stuff. Then it would be in physics, or it could be flipped if it's more of a zany, my best friend's wedding or something like that. So it's great. It's a great step. In fact, I am going to go ahead and do this, which is super cool to help out. But then the happy ending isn't there. But likely, if you know how the story works, or if you know how story structure works, then you know, all right, well, I'm going to make my main character this fish out of water. It's going to be about them growing and becoming more mature. The major plot points are going to be decision based. I want to make it that they're the kind of person who is always just trying to cheer on everybody else, but at the end, they become more oppositional. They stand up for themselves. I'm going to keep it here about achieving a goal just to keep it simple. And then they're going to change and it's going to be a triumph. And then that's it. So it tells you what the arcs are going to be for the main character and the obstacle character, so you can check it. All right, everybody's going to be really supportive. And then at the end, because they actually stand up for themselves, that's good. And then the obstacle characters, they're the kind of person that just goes for things. Perfect. All right. So then that's it. I might come up here just to check and make sure. Yeah, showing approval, being somebody's cheerleader. So it's someone who's always being somebody else's cheerleader. And then they can manifest their true self. So then I would generate it like the same way that I did when I was going through and building it with the narrative agents, but I'm setting the story form ahead of time. So by stepping aside and ceasing to be an unquestioning cheerleader, you can allow your true nature to manifest. That's perfect. That's exactly what I would want. Example story for office hours. Build this story. And then it's going to go off and do the same thing that the narrative agents do, but not extract the 4 through lines. So now it's just building that story form. It's going to be completely empty. There's not going to be anything in there except it's going to have all the relationships between all the thematic stuff that I've set up. That will be in there. And then I would start to build the storytelling on top of that. So right now it's just building out the whole story, making sure I have access to all the different bits and pieces that I need. And then once that's done, then I'll be able to start working with it. All right. So now it's done. So I can just jump on over there. And I got an email saying everything's great. And then I'll just close up the progress bar here. And then let me just look in here and see the story form. You'll see it's that same story form, example story for office hours, and has all the settings, but then it went through and built out the entire narrative. So it's all here, every single thing, but there's no storytelling in it whatsoever. No 4 through lines. Then I would start to build it up. So I would come in here. I would probably say romantic comedy, just to set the genre, and then a group of 4 or 5. Actually, what I would probably do, since I have no idea what I'm doing, I'll just open up the brainstorming and say group of 4, 5 couples who go on an adventure into the Amazon. Couples therapy type thing. Couples therapy type thing. Sounds good. And then I'll do this, and it'll just help generate some kind of idea based on that. So in an effort to rekindle their spark, 4 disparate couples, each on the verge of relationship collapse, sign up for an unconventional couples therapy retreat nestled deep within the Amazon rainforest. An eccentric therapist. Cool. Nice little romantic comedy. I'll just add that into the idea. And then what I would do is I would come into the 4 through lines. And because I'm doing it manually, I would just come up here, regenerate the complete story based on it. And then that will go out and take that idea that I had. It's the same thing as putting it in the narrative agents. I just already know the story form. And then I can start to build it. So this is going to do the same thing. You'll notice almost the same stuff as the narrative agents, but it's not going to build a story form because I've already picked what that story form is going to be. So now it's going to go through, and from that one basic idea, it's going to go through, extract the 4 through lines. It's going to figure out the best plot, come up with a main character, come up with an obstacle character, their relationship, blend all those 4 through lines together, and then we'll be good to go. So as soon as this is finished, I'll be right back. All right, all finished. And take me there. And then I will come into here and take a look at the complete story. So this has the entire narrative, exactly the same thing as the narrative agents, but I set the story form ahead of time so that I know it's going to be about rekindling bonds in the Amazon, 4 couples on the brink of a relationship. This will be pretty much what the story idea is. And then Betty is going to be the main character. She feels skeptical and disconnected from her partner. Wonderful. Then there's Ruby Franklin, who I think is probably the eccentric therapist. That's interesting. And then patient therapist. The relationship between Betty is complex, marked by... All right. Actually, usually in these kind of things, the obstacle character is the love interest. Maybe the therapist, we could change that around. Or maybe this is the love interest between Betty and Ruby. Possibility. And then this would be it all blended in together. So I could probably just break this up a little bit to make it easier to read. And then that would be the complete story. We got Betty Long. She's armored with skepticism and a deep-seated fear of vulnerability, who finds herself at a crossroads between maintaining her protective barriers and embracing the raw intimacy the retreat demands. And then along comes Ruby. They have a relationship. And you can make this, if you want, you could just come in here and say, make this a romantic relationship that develops between Betty and Dr. Franklin. Because right now it's a basic sort of thing. It's just like a therapist-patient sort of thing. So maybe I want to add in, it's supposed to be the heart of the story. It's supposed to be what attracts you to it, or where the heartfelt stuff is. However, as the retreat challenges unfold and they share unique, unexpected moments, a transformation occurs. Their initial interaction, grounded in therapy and patient dynamics, gradually evolves into a deep emotional connection and mutual respect. And an unexpected romance. I love that. So I'll bring that in here. Changed it to a romantic relationship, which is fantastic. So then what I would do is I would go ahead and reblend all that into a brand new understanding of it. So it's going to rewrite it with this new idea of the through line of them falling in love with one another. If I add that in there instead, under the guidance of Dr. Franklin, the wild encounters and shared adversities not only serve to mend the fractures, but also catalyze an unexpected connection between Betty and Dr. Franklin. Their relationship, initially framed within the confines of therapist and patient, gradually evolves into a profound romance blossoming against the backdrop of the Amazon's breathtaking beauty. Beautiful. And then I would go on to the next step through the plot players, then the character arcs, then the story form. Once all the pivotal elements of the story form are set, then generate the story beats, then plot the moments that happen in each act, and then download the treatment. But if I just wanted to, I could just take this idea, these 4 through lines, and then just go ahead and start working on it. But at least I have a better idea of what this story could be about beyond just 4 couples who are trying to figure out what they're all about. Now I have this whole romance thing in the middle of the Amazon, which actually sounds quite fun. So then their relationship that I was having difficulty understanding, they're going to grow closer together by all the activities. Maybe they get separated from everybody. And there's a lot of survival, climbing trees, falling into rivers, saving each other, that kind of stuff. And then that's how they would grow closer and fall in love with one another. All right, that's it for the very first edition of Office Hours. I'll get more comfortable with this and, of course, get better at doing all this stuff and answer a whole bunch of questions that come in. Maybe do a little bit of a live thing. But hopefully this gives you a good idea of what to do if you already know the narrative structure that you want and how you would go about putting it into subtext without too much issue. All right. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.